Welcome to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio from Boise, Idaho. This is your host, Adam Graham. If you have a comment, email it to me, box13 at greatdetectives.net. Follow us on Twitter at Radio Detectives, and check us out on Instagram, instagram.com/greatdetectives. Today's program is brought to you in part by the financial support of our listeners. You can support the show on a one-time basis using PayPal to support.greatdetectives.net, and you can also become one of our ongoing Patreon supporters for as little as $2 per month. Just go to patreon.greatdetectives.net. Well, now it is time for this week's episode of The Adventures of Sam Spade. The original air date, March the 30th, 1951, and the title is The Vendetta Caper.
Broadcasting Company presents The Adventures of Sam Spade, Detective.
Sam Spade Detective Agency.
Me, sweetheart.
Sam! I heard you were hobnobbing with the wealthy set of our city.
If what I was doing is their idea of hobnobbing, I'm glad I'm in the lower income brackets.
What do you mean? What happened?
I will only reveal that, Effie, in the intimate secrecy of our office.
Was it that bad?
Worse, F. Emotions ran amok. Passions were strewn from Fisherman's Wharf to the peninsula. Hatreds festooned the very air. And there was jealousy, too.
My.
It was positively lurid, as they say.
Well, do you think it's all right for me to hear it?
Well, I'll expurgate it a little, F. I'll water it down to your strength. I'll use monosyllabic instead of polysyllabic words, and so on.
Now, Sam, I want you to tell me everything you think I should hear. And then just a little more.
It's a deal, F. Prepare yourself for listening, and I will shortly make my entrance with a saga of society skullduggery, the lowdown on the uptown, and all that. Now, if we need a name for it, why not call it the Vendetta Caper, or the Revenge of Monte Kristoff?
Transcribed for NBC, William Spear, radio's outstanding producer-director of mystery and crime drama, brings you the greatest private detective of them all in The Adventures of Sam Spade.
You don't have to call, Sam. I'm right here. Let me take your coat.
Well, Effie, isn't this sufficient of you?
Now be quiet and give me your coat.
All right. Thank you.
Now, I've oiled your chair so it won't squeak. Sit down.
Well, you make me feel like an emotional invalid, but it's wonderful.
And here.
Oh, will miracles never cease?
A double.
Well.
It's 8-year-old stuff. I had Friskin's drugstore send it up. Applejack, it's called.
Applejack. Well, what brought it on, F? Why this particular polishing of the Applejack?
Well,
Come on, out with it.
No, I just thought, well, you've been working with the rich people, and maybe you were handsomely compensated.
Mm-hmm.
And, my back salary? You're not mad, Sam?
Well, as it happens, I did make a few dollars, and yours will be the first account settled.
Oh, Sam!
So, it wasn't me. It was the money all the time.
No, Sam, no, I just...
I accept your apology. To Lieutenant J.F. Randall, San Francisco Police Department, from Samuel Spade, license number 137596. Subject, The Revenge of Monte Kristoff.
Monte Cristo? Is this a historical drama?
Kristoff. Kristoff.
Oh.
Monty. Monty. And it's still a historical drama. Dear Lieutenant, revenge is an old-fashioned motive, but when you get it raw and distilled, as in the Gazden affair, it's new all over again. This was the slow-burning, deliberate kind of passion that starts smoldering way back in the forgotten days and explodes among some people who never knew they were living over a keg of dynamite. It was yesterday morning that the distant sputtering of the fuse began to be heard by a man named Chandler Gazden. You know him, the hulking rich boy, the electrical appliance scion who took up professional boxing for a while. I think he was billed as Gold Plate Gazden, a society scrapper. And he was doing well, too, until a right cross by someone who needed the money more than he did sent him back to clipping coupons.
Spade?
Yeah?
I'm Chandler Gazden.
Well, I recognize you.
What do guys like you charge?
Well, it depends on the job.
Investigation.
$60 a day, and any unusual expenses.
Cheap?
Well,
And do you guys have some kind of a code, huh?
Code?
You know, like doctors. Do you keep things in confidence?
Well, most of us do, including me.
I don't suppose it'd make any big difference if it got out. I'm not afraid of him. I'd just as soon punch him in the mouth as look at him.
Who?
Monty Kristoff. Heard of him?
No.
Moved into the peninsula, my neighborhood. Bought the Major Dunhill place.
Oh, yeah, I know the estate. Must have cost plenty to buy.
$250,000, I hear. But what's money these days? Everybody's got it.
Yeah, isn't it awful? It's a tax scheme, I suppose.
Ever since he moved into that ark of a house, he's been throwing parties. They're a cross between the last days of Pompeii and a Polish wedding. He invites hundreds of guests, everybody who is anybody.
Disgusting. But it seems legal so far.
He's been there 4 months throwing parties, inviting everybody in the phone book. Everybody but me.
Well, maybe he just doesn't like you.
What are you talking about? I'm one of the best-liked guys in the peninsula. Everybody likes me, little kids, cops, the guys at the country club. I never had an enemy in the world. Besides, I got Virginia.
Oh, who's she?
My wife.
Oh.
One of the sweetest little girls that ever came down the pike.
Well, my apology.
She was a bald one.
Oh.
The year I married her, she was the social catch of the year among the women.
Really?
Yeah. So was I among the men.
Well,
look, I got to tell you some more. A month ago, one of my company warehouses burned down. Somebody slipped up and the fire insurance hadn't been renewed. I lost $350,000. Guess who had lunch with my insurance man a week before the fire?
Monty Kristoff.
You got it. Next thing is, the rumor gets around that the Gazden Electrical Company is on the verge of bankruptcy.
Well, of course it isn't.
Absolutely not. A gossip columnist reports that I'm going to close up shop and beat it to South America with what dough is left. Then when the stock prices start dropping, somebody suddenly buys them up so fast they disappear overnight. Some corporation I never heard of called the Dantes Corporation.
I see.
And then all my friends start getting unfriendly. As soon as I show up, everybody stops talking. Act as if there's some big secret about me that I don't know.
And they've all been to Monty Kristoff's parties lately.
That's right. The week after he arrived in town, all these things started happening. Now, what I want to find out is why. I don't even know the guy, but he's making a big change in my life.
Well, it sounds like you're entitled to know. I don't know how far I can get. The best I can do is find out who he is, where he comes from, who his friends are, all those things.
Okay, you're hired. Now, find out everything about this Monty Kristoff. I got to know what's going on.
I'm sorry, Chandler. I wasn't able to get here when you said. The traffic was absolutely unbelievable. Cars everywhere. They must be giving cars away these days. Everybody has one. I think we should get a helicopter.
Mr. Spade, my wife, Ginny.
Well, how do you do, Mrs. Gazden?
Chan, I hope you haven't lost your head and blabbed everything to him. I told you these sort of men weren't trustworthy.
I beg your pardon, madam?
Look, Ginny, I told him, and he's a good guy.
Well, if you just want to go around giving your life secrets...
Oh, shut up, will you? I'm the man of the house.
Really? And I suppose I count for nothing?
Oh, no, forget it. Spade, I'm depending on you. Don't let me down.
You wouldn't think a millionaire would be hard to biograph, but I came up with very little information on Mr. Monty Kristoff. He'd arrived in town 4 months ago, stayed 10 days at the St. Mark Hotel, then bought his house. He had a bank deposit running into 7 figures. He had no known business connections, just money. The register at the St. Mark said he came from Chicago, and an airline company verified that he'd been a passenger aboard one of their ships from the Windy City. This was as far as I'd delved when my place of business was entered by a man in powder blue livery.
You Spade?
The same.
Mr. Monty Kristoff sent me to pick you up.
I see. Up for where?
For his mansion on the peninsula.
Oh.
He said he knew what a rough time you must be having at your present job and that he'd be glad to make the whole thing simple to you.
Oh, you really said that?
That's what he said.
Oh.
But I don't know what it means exactly.
Well, I don't know what it means exactly either, but there's one good way to find out. Home, James?
My name is Bertuccio, sir.
Bertuccio? I see. How long have they been calling you that?
Well, let me see. It's about... Oh, what do you mean? I mean, it's my name.
All right. We'll talk it over in the car. The car was long and blue and smooth. I'm as democratic as the next guy, and I would just as soon have ridden up front with Bertuccio, but no, he wouldn't hear of it. I had to ride in a back seat with a window of bulletproof glass separating us. And thus we rode down to the peninsula. We glided down elm-shaded streets and finally through the gate of Monty Kristoff's estate. The driveway was lined with spring green poplars. The mansion door was opened by a rear admiral, and I was ushered in. I wouldn't want to say that the living room was large, but I coughed once, and it was a full minute before the echo came back. A door opened somewhere, and a tan, hard-bodied man walked in across the marble floor with an outstretched hand. It was tougher than whalebone.
appreciate your coming, Mr. Spade.
Mr. Kristoff.
Did you have a drink? Champagne, Scotch, Irish, what?
Oh, anything. Whatever you like.
Good. I figured you for rye. It's already ordered.
Rye it is.
Cigar?
No, thanks.
They're custom rolled Havanas, made expressly to my own taste.
No, thanks anyway, but I have some beat-up cigarettes here, son.
Well, try mine. The King of England, I did him a favor once. He ships them over.
How is George?
You drink, Mr. Spade.
Oh, thank you, Bertuccio.
Now, you've been investigating me,
Yes.
and you haven't found out anything.
How'd you know, Mr. Kristoff?
There was nothing to find out.
Well, you read.
I'll do you a service and save you time and money.
Well, that's a handsome offer. I accept.
I was born in Michigan to a prosperous lumber family. I went to Phillips Andover and Harvard.
Well,
Mark's fair. I served with the Army in the recent war. Major, military police, wounded twice. Parents died while I was in Italy. I inherited enormous lumber holdings, which I sold. Hence my bank account. I like San Francisco. Came here, settled down.
well, you're very kind, but I don't need all this
I have more money than a man can spend in a lifetime. And by that, I don't mean to boast. It was an accident of birth.
Yes. Now, Mr. Kristoff, I'm only trying to find out.
I know what you're trying to find out. Chandler Gazden put you on my trail.
Well, there's no need to deny it.
And what would you take to get off my trail, Mr. Spade?
Well,
New car, a selection of fine liquor, a better job, cash?
all rather enticing, but I'm afraid you've misjudged me, sir. I only work for one client at a time.
Is there anything wrong with switching your allegiance?
Well, I'm afraid it wouldn't be cricket. Is that the way they say it at Andover?
Very well. Then I'm afraid I've given you all the information I can about myself.
Well, you've been very generous. But just one other thing. How long did you live in Chicago?
Chicago?
Yes,
I never lived there.
but you flew here from Chicago.
Oh, that. I was just there on business.
Well, if you say so.
Bertuccio is outside with a car. He'll drive you back to your office.
And with that, he turned and left me. Outside, Bertuccio was waiting. Impassively, he ushered me into the limousine and started out. Only we didn't head for my office. Instead, we seemed to be leaving town. I banged on the glass between us, but Bertuccio didn't choose to answer. When we stopped at a light, I tried the doors, but they were both mysteriously locked. I was a prisoner in a moving jail. I made desperate signs to passers-by and traffic policemen I knew, but they just smiled and waved back at me. It was all very jolly. So I sat back and waited. About 20 or 30 miles out of town, we pulled onto a lonesome road and stopped.
Here we are.
Well, just where are we and why?
Now, don't blow your top. Kristoff told me to take you out here and to give you this.
Oh? What's in the envelope?
Money. $2,000 to be exact.
Well, that's a lot of grands.
They're going to do a lot for you. You're going to take it and keep going north. 48 hours will be long enough, just so you keep out of Frisco.
Well, just so you know how I stand, I'm going back.
You know, I was hoping you'd say that. Now I can do things my own way.
He pulled out a long black sap and started wielding it. The first cut just grazed my head and smashed into my shoulder. I blocked his second blow and moved in for some close work. The third time he swung at me, his arm caught an overhead tree branch, and that was his undoing. He took 4 or 5 and then went down and out. I searched him, and his billfold revealed that he was Joseph Kowalski, late of Chicago, Illinois. The cards and addresses it contained left little doubt that Kowalski was in the rackets. I threw him in the car and drove back to town and police headquarters. He was awake by then, and I had to drag him into the hall.
You want him locked up, Sam? What for?
Assault and battery, assault with a deadly weapon, assault with intent to murder, mayhem, anything.
You can't lock me up. I didn't do any of those things. Anyway, if I did do them, it was in San Martin County, not Frisco.
Well, Sam, I don't know what I can do. He's got to do something in our jurisdiction.
Sure, see?
All right, he picked my pocket on the way into town. Here, Kowalski.
What?
See, look, he's got my wallet in his hand right now. Why, of all the brazen lawbreakers, you going to let him get away with this, walking right into headquarters with the evidence in his hand?
Oh, wait a minute.
Come on, Kowalski. We go pretty hard on pickpockets in this town.
I'm being framed. I want a lawyer. Get me a telephone.
He was dragged away, protesting. He got no sympathy from me. He started. Lieutenant Randall then teletyped Chicago to find out more about him. In about an hour, the report came back.
I won't read his whole record, Sam, but he's paid for everything, they say. He's clean.
Huh?
However, it does say he was the bodyguard for a man named Barney Moffat. It says Moffat was a shady business operator. Picked up several times, but nothing hung on him. He left town about the same time Kowalski did. He's listed as undesirable, but he's not wanted.
Thanks, Lieutenant. If a man named Barney Moffat had a hood named Joseph Kowalski as a bodyguard, and they both disappeared from Chicago at the same time, the obvious conclusion was conclusively obvious. I drove the limousine back to Kristoff's estate. But as I parked the car, my headlights hit another car. There was someone getting into it, Mrs. Chandler Gazden.
Oh, you, what do you think you're doing?
Remember me, Sam Spade?
Oh, detective.
Yes.
What are you following me for?
What were you doing in Kristoff's house? I thought he wasn't a friend of yours, or your husband.
Mr. Spade, get in, please. Let's talk.
Okay, spill it.
It's none of your business what I was doing in there. Whatever it was, I want you to forget you ever saw me.
That'll be pretty hard to do.
Would money help you?
In this case, no.
What do you care what happens to my life or Chan's or Kristoff's?
Because your husband's paying me to worry.
All right. If I were you, I'd just forget that you ever met any of us. Because this mess we're in is so bad that nothing you or anybody else can do is going to get us out of trouble.
With that, she burst out crying, and I couldn't get anything else out of her. So I let her go, and she drove off. I walked up to Kristoff's house, knocked on the door, and a servant opened it. I took a couple of steps inside when 6 pairs of arms grabbed me. Some of them had fists on them. The struggle was just getting lively when Kristoff appeared.
All right, let him go, let him go.
Well, I don't appreciate this kind of treatment, Kristoff.
You weren't hurt, Spade. All right, men, take a walk.
Now, what's it all about?
It was my orders if you ever showed up here again.
Why'd you soften?
I just heard about Kowalski. You managed that very well. I admire resourcefulness. How would you like to work for me?
No thanks, Moffat.
Moffat.
Barney Moffat, late of Chicago and the rackets.
So you know, huh?
Well, I wasn't sure until just now, but you cleared up the doubt.
How much do you know?
Very little. Just that you were a shady operator, but nobody's looking for you or anything.
Spade, I did a lot of things. Several years at tightrope walking with the law. But I never did anything they could jail me for.
I have an idea you're considering doing something in the near future.
What makes you say that?
Well, it's a vendetta, isn't it? Monte Kristoff and Bertuccio the Steward and the Dentist Corporation. You couldn't resist the drama, could you? All from Dumas' novel. But why? Why do you want to play the Count of Monte Cristo? What did Gazden do to you to merit all this revenge?
Tomorrow. It'll be over tomorrow.
And with that, he clutched at his heart and fell forward at my feet.
You are listening to the weekly adventure of radio's most famous detective, Sam Spade. 3 chimes mean good times on NBC. If you've been searching for mystery on Saturday night, put away your magnifying glass and follow these clues. Dial this NBC station tomorrow evening and listen for the chimes, and then you'll be off on a perilous trip with The Man Called X, starring Herbert Marshall. And if you've been searching for music, too, on Saturday, then Eileen Wilson is your dish as she stars in Your Hit Parade with Snooky Lanson and Raymond Scott's orchestra. And now back to the Vendetta Caper, or The Revenge of Monte Kristoff, tonight's adventure with Sam Spade.
I bent over and listened to his heart. It was okay. Monte Kristoff had just keeled over, apparently, from a crescendo of emotion. He blacked out. I didn't want to be held up by his henchmen, so I left the room and walked out of the house without calling anybody. I walked down the road, and good luck, there was an empty cab cruising along. At Chandler Gazden's, I found him pacing the living room in a state of physical and mental disorder. I told him what I knew.
Vendetta? Why? I never heard of him. I never did anything to the man.
Why would your wife go and see him?
I don't know.
Why don't you ask her?
Because she hasn't been home all day, and here it is 1 o'clock in the morning. She still isn't in.
Tell me, is there something special happening tomorrow? Kristoff seemed to think that everything would be settled tomorrow.
It's our annual corporation election, just a matter of form. I'm elected president. A few other people voted into office, always the same people.
Well, then he must plan to swing the election his way. Maybe put you in office.
Huh, got a fat chance of that. I don't care how much stock he buys. Ginny owns 10%. I own 41. That's 51%. If he bought 49% in the open market, that still wouldn't be enough. We could still outvote him.
You're sure you've got the stock in your
Sure.
position?
I saw it last week when I was down in the vault looking for my birth certificate. Stupid me, forgot I don't have a birth certificate.
Huh?
No, that must be Edson, my lawyer. Called and said he had something on his mind.
Chandler, I have bad news for you.
It can wait.
No, it can't.
This is Sam Spade, Ralph Edson.
How do you do?
Spade. Now, Chan, listen to me.
All right, what's biting you?
Just this. We're liable to lose that election tomorrow.
What are you talking about? We can't.
I just found out that Monte Kristoff has 59% of the voting stock in Gazden Electric.
15? He can't have it. Oh, look, wait a minute. If my wife sold her stock, he could have 59, couldn't he?
He could.
Spade. Are you positive you saw her coming out of Kristoff's house?
I'm afraid I did.
I'm going to find her. And if she sold any of her stock to Kristoff, I'll kill her.
I tried to dissuade him, but he brushed me and the lawyer aside and ran out of the house. I called the police and told them to try and find Virginia Gazden before her husband did.
Then I went looking myself. The first place I tried was Monte Kristoff's mansion. There were lights on, so I entered, gun in hand. I didn't have any time to dicker with servants and bodyguards. And Kristoff appeared in a matter of seconds.
All right, Spade, what is it you want now?
Virginia Gazden.
She hasn't been here since the last time you saw her.
You know where she is?
Haven't any idea.
Well, if you know, tell me. Her husband's looking for her with homicide in his eyes.
I can't say I'm sorry.
Well, that's a nice sentiment. She sold you her stock in the Gazden Company, didn't she?
Since you seem to know about it, yes.
Why? She in love with you?
I think maybe she is.
And you're in love with her?
She's a stupid, empty-headed nothing. I can't stand the sight of her. I hate her.
Now, hold it now. You'll knock yourself out again.
Yes. Come over here. Take a good look at that.
No, it's a pillow. An ordinary pillow. So?
You notice how dirty it is?
Yeah.
Notice that it isn't even stuffed with feathers. They were too good. It's stuffed with dirty cotton rags.
Well?
My father's head was lying on that pillow when he died. I've kept it ever since as a reminder of who killed him.
Who did?
A man named Elwood Gazden. A man who cheated and lied and stole everything he had in his life.
Chandler's father, huh?
Yes. My father and Elwood Gazden had a hardware store once. My father invented an electric iron. Ever heard of the Gazden iron?
Yeah.
It should have been the Moffat iron. Elwood Gazden stole the plans from my father, registered them first, and then drove my father out of business. He made a fortune out of it, and then went into other electrical appliances.
Well, things are beginning to gel now.
My father became a peddler and died poor and broke and ill. My mother died 20 years before she should have from overwork, while the Gazdens grew fat and respected on the Moffat brains.
So you started your vendetta, huh?
I started it the day my father died. I set out to make one thing in this world, money. And I made it in handfuls. You can look me up. Barney Moffat, Chicago. Gambling, black markets, gun running, slave trading, anything and everything that had a big profit in it. And then I set out for San Francisco to break that Creighton son of Elwood's and his whole family.
And on the way, you lost a guy named Barney Moffat.
What difference?
Look, you've got money now and everything you need. Why go on with it?
I don't care anything about money. I only want to use it against them. Do you know why I had all those parties?
To buy stock from people.
Yes. Stock in the Gazden Company. I've paid twice, 3 times what the shares were worth. But right now, I own 59% of the Gazden Enterprises. And tomorrow morning, when the two of us meet at the stockholders' meeting, I'm going to vote him out of office and take over the company. And then, I'm going to drive it right into bankruptcy.
And you got Mrs. Gazden's stock by making her fall in love with you.
I had to. Don't let's talk about it anymore.
About Chandler Gazden, he's a man with a very short and violent temper. He might come gunning for you.
That's just what I hope he does. Ask the man at the door to show you out.
I spent most of the night trying to find Virginia Gazden with no luck. Chandler didn't return to his house, so I didn't know what he was up to. It was early the following day when I got my first report. Lieutenant Randall called me down to police headquarters.
We found her, Spade.
Dead or alive?
Oh, about halfway in between. She was shot in the chest at close range. Gun right up against her. But she's still living.
And what are her chances?
Fair.
Where'd you find her?
In a walk-up apartment on Polk Street. It was registered to her. Looked like a love nest, a place where she met a boyfriend or something. No weapon.
I see.
I figure murder attempt. Her husband. We have a pickup on him right now, but so far he's vanished. Shame. Fine old San Francisco family. What do you know, Sam?
Well, give me a free hand for a couple of hours, will you? Maybe I can do something for this fine old San Francisco family. I had no more idea than the police where Chandler Gazden was at the moment, but I had a good idea where he might be later in the morning. I put a call into Ralph Edson, his lawyer. The stockholders' meeting of the Gazden Company was to be held at 11 o'clock at their executive offices. Edson got me in, and at 5 minutes to 11, Monty Kristoff walked in. There were 3 of us. None of us spoke. We just sat around a long, polished table, alternately watching the clock and the door. At 11:03, the door opened. Chandler Gazden stood there, rumpled, red-eyed, vicious. He had a gun.
The first man who moves is going to get a bullet right in the face.
Chandler, for heaven's sake.
Shut up.
Is that the gun you tried to kill your wife with?
It's the gun, but I didn't try to kill her. She did it herself because he drove her to it.
Me?
Yeah, you, Kristoff. You were meeting her in an apartment. Don't think I've been dumb.
Put the gun away and let's get down to business.
Are you kidding? I got the same gun she used on herself, and I'm going to use it on you.
Well, stop talking and get it over with.
You act as if you want me to do it. All right. Edson, Spade, clear out of here.
Gazden, use your head.
I said get out of here. Now go on.
Okay, but don't take your eye off him. He's got a gun in his pocket.
Don't worry, I won't. You were working for him. Working for him all along. Everybody was.
No, now listen to me. He wanted you to kill him. He doesn't care about himself. He just wanted you to be put away for murder.
Spade, this is our affair, not yours.
Now, look, both of you shut up and listen. This is a tough thing to try to settle something that's been boiling up in you, Moffat, ever since you can remember. You spent all of your grown-up life trying to get back at the wrong man. It appealed to some ironical sense of yours to carry out the Monte Cristo revenge story. Now, let me ask you this. You remember all about Monte Cristo and how he ruined the people who had ruined his life and how his father died heartbroken. But do you remember the end of that book?
Go on.
He found that he couldn't bring himself to revenge the wrongdoings of families on their innocent children.
That reads good in a book, but I don't feel that way.
Well, maybe you will when you hear this.
What?
This man right here that you've spent 20 years getting ready to ruin is not even a Gazden.
Huh?
What?
He's an adopted son.
Mr.
Elwood
Spade,
Gazden adopted him from an Oakland orphanage on October 11th, 1907. I got the records to prove it this morning.
I don't believe it. I would have known.
Mr. Edson, you've always been the family lawyer. Isn't this true? It was a long chance that Edson would play along with it. But to bring it off, it needed the final clincher. Lawyer Edson looked at me, then looked at Chandler Gazden. He gulped and licked his lips.
It's true. It's true, Chandler.
Adopted?
Your father never wanted you to know.
Chandler didn't move. He just stood there stunned. But Barney Moffat sank down into a chair and buried his head in his hands. Edson and I looked at each other and waited. And finally, Kristoff looked up and spoke.
Start the meeting.
Mr. Edson?
I hereby declare the annual stockholders' meeting of the Gazden Company open. Mr. Gazden?
I don't care what happens now. I bow to the majority stockholder.
Oh. Mr. Kristoff... I beg your pardon, Mr. Moffat?
As the majority stockholder, I vote that the chairmanship of the Gazden Electrical Corporation remain as it has for the past 20 years with Chandler Gazden.
Period. End of report.
Oh, Sam, you were magnificent.
It was rather a stirring scene, wasn't it? I was good.
But it was superb. It really was.
Mm-hmm.
Did he sign over the stock and everything?
Oh, he did indeed.
Oh. Sam, do you think the world will ever get to a time when everybody has all he wants, and instead of trying to get more, everybody spends his time just trying to enjoy life?
Well, you know best, Effie.
Do you really believe that, Sam?
Well, you've got to believe something. It's better than nothing. I guess.
I have a theory, too, Sam.
Well, spout it out.
Well, if everybody in the world picks somebody else to be nice to, there'll never be any more trouble anywhere.
How do you figure that?
Well, before you can be nice to somebody, you have to think nice thoughts, see? And once you start thinking nice thoughts, well, you can see how silly the bad ones are.
Effie, come here. You know, I might just put you up as a candidate for a chair of philosophy at Columbia.
Oh, Sam. I know who you picked out to be nice to. Me.
True.
And I picked you. Good night, Sam.
Good night, sweetheart.
Tonight's transcribed adventure of Sam Spade was produced, edited, and directed by William Spear. Sam Spade was played by Stephen Dunne, Lurene Tuttle as Effie. Script for tonight's adventure by John Michael Hayes. Musical scoring by Lud Gluskin, conducted by Robert Armbruster. Join us again next week, same time, for another adventure with Sam Spade. Tomorrow, Dennis Day and Judy Canova entertain you on NBC.
Welcome back. Well, this was, I think, a really good production. There are a lot of stories that are inspired by both classic and modern stories that can come off as cheesy, contrived, or derivative. However, I think this episode illustrates that the right writer and production team working on the right story can tell a tale that explores the theme of the original story in a way that makes them come alive in a different setting. And this managed to do it even within the confines of a half-hour detective program. In terms of dramatic acting, this was Stephen Dunne's best performance and shows what he could do if he was given the right material. I also found Effie's discussion at the end to be sweet and thought-provoking. In the midst of all that, they still worked in some funny lines, so, it still felt like Sam Spade. I loved when Mrs. Gazden complained everyone had cars and suggested that because of that, they should buy a helicopter. Well, now we turn to listener comments and feedback, and Eric says, Sam Spade, Dragnet, and the Johnny Dollar serials. Let's just take a minute and savor this lineup. Sam and Dragnet might not be what they were at their peak, but they are still among the best series ever produced. Dangerous Assignment is one of the better espionage series, and Mr. Chameleon is at least historically important, doing it to it being an example of the work of the Hummerts, one of the most prolific and successful radio producers of all time. Those three core series, though, that's just about as good as it gets in this genre. Thanks for bringing it to us. Well, thank you so much, Eric. And I think this is a really good lineup. Now, of course, we'll be finishing up Sam Spade next month, so it's a good opportunity to savor it. Although I think The Falcon is also a wonderful series that I hope folks will enjoy. And I like, always finding ways to bring, really interesting combinations. Now, of course, the first time that we went through the Johnny Dollar serials, we had Sherlock Holmes and Dragnet, although we had Sherlock Holmes at the beginning of the serial era, and then Dragnet came along towards the end. Looking back through the history of the show, we've had some really interesting combinations. I think that even the 5-day-a-week era in the first two seasons had some good, solid lineups. Box 13, Pat Novak for Hire, Let George Do It with Bob Bailey, Sherlock Holmes, and yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Now, even if you're not a particular fan of Pat Novak for Hire or Charles Russell's take on Johnny Dollar, about the midpoint of the season, we had Alan Ladd in Box 13, Jack Webb, and then later Frank Graham and Jeff Regan, Bob Bailey and Let George Do It, Basil Rathbone in Sherlock Holmes, and Edmund O'Brien as Johnny Dollar. Second season also had some pretty good lineups, particularly during the period where we had Nero Wolfe and Tom Conway as Sherlock Holmes at the same time. Monday programs of The Thin Man and the Abbotts might not be to everyone's taste. In terms of the 6-day-a-week lineups, and for this I'll kind of exclude consideration of the Tuesday programs just because the Tuesday shows tend to change quite a bit more frequently and be a bit more niche. And that's just how the typical Tuesday is designed, because I really want to feature those sort of shows. One great lineup that we had is we were playing Night Beats on Monday, Richard Diamond on Wednesday, Austin Blackie on Thursday, yours truly Johnny Dollar with Bob Bailey on Friday, and Dragnet with Jack Webb, of course. Now, I will say that by that point, you kind of started to see the decline in the self-contained Johnny Dollar episodes. My actual all-time favorite lineup that we've had, and I've been going through some of the past seasons, recording commentaries for our archive feeds. We're currently working on Volume 2, which is currently posting episodes from Season 4, but I recorded the Season 5 commentary. And during Season 5 and into Season 6, we had, on Mondays, Vincent Price as the Saint. Wednesdays, The Adventures of Philip Marlowe with Gerald Moore. Thursdays, we had Nick Carter, Master Detective. Friday, we had, of course, Bob Bailey as Johnny Dollar, though the episodes were stronger the earlier in the self-contained runs for reasons I've discussed. And then, of course, Saturday, Dragnet, with Dragnet probably being in its most interesting and innovative episode. So while I've loved a lot of lineups that we've had, including this one, I think my favorite is that Season 5, Season 6 lineup. And of course, if you've got a thought as to a different lineup that you enjoyed, whether it's one I discussed or not, I'd love to hear from you, as well as if you have anything else you'd like to email about. Well, now let's thank our Patreon supporter of the day. And I want to go ahead and thank Frank. Frank has been one of our Patreon supporters since January of 2021, currently supporting the podcast at the rookie level of $2 or more per month. Thank you so much for your support, Frank. And that will do it for today. If you're enjoying this podcast, please follow us using your favorite podcast software. And be sure to rate and review the podcast wherever you download it from. We'll be back next Monday with another episode of Sam Spade, but join us back here tomorrow for the start of another Yours Truly Johnny Dollar serial where...
Out of gas, are you? Big deal, huh? That tank is almost full.
Yeah, well, there's no use lying to you, I suppose.
Nope, I'm too smart.
I see.
Another thing, you're not with the Cattlemen's Association, Mr. Dollar.
I'm not?
Nope. I think you're here to dig up the past because of what has happened and what might be going to happen.
All of that, huh?
Yep. And you know what? I think it's just fine and dandy.
You do?
You bet I do. I loved my dad. I loved him more than anything. They knew what he always did when he got mad. Sure they knew. I figured it out a long time ago.
Like to tell me about it, Susan?
You'll find out, Mr. Dollar. I think you're the kind of a man who smashes into things, right into the middle, and breaks them wide open. Be careful, though.
Oh?
Because you know something? You're smashing into a bomb.
I hope you'll be with us then. In the meantime, do send your comments to box13@greatdetectives.net. Follow us on Twitter at Radio Detectives and check us out on Instagram. Instagram.com/greatdetectives. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham, signing off.